Hey guys, uh, this week I was wanting to talk a little bit about something a lot of people do, and that's talk about how they're waiting on God to do something. And yeah, granted, there is times when waiting on God is legitimate, but a lot of times it's a load of crap. Like um, a while back, I was telling you how God was getting on to me and how I need to keep myself in line around certain people. They gave me a handful of people I needed to reconcile with, and and I did. And there was one that I don't even keep in touch with anymore. That I need to apologize for stuff uh, 10, 12 years ago, and she's a friend of a friend, so I could have tracked her down if I wanted to. And God told me to. He told me to make things right with this chick. And I was like, well, all right, God, I'll do that. So as soon as you give me the words to say, we'll knock that out. He never did. It wasn't about God carrying me through all of this stuff. It was with that one, man, I put it off for quite a while, a few weeks. And just probably 3 days ago, I think, I sent her a message just saying, hey, I'm sorry for how I acted and treated you all that time ago. So, that's something that's haunted me for a while, and I just hope we can both get past it. And, with all these other apologies I had to make too, I was waiting for them to just get on their soapbox and start calling down condemnation on me and all that. Everybody was really gracious, and so was this chick. And she's like, you're not the first person who made fun of me, and you're certainly not the last, but you were the first to apologize. And I really can't tell you how much that means to me. And honestly, man, I thought that was pretty cool of her. And it was like something in me was finally got loosened up too. But it wouldn't have if I had kept waiting on God. And I come up with all this crap on myself because, like I said, I keep myself accountable to you guys. Plus, I don't even know most of who watches this, so if I throw myself under the bus, what am I out? But man, I can't think of a single person that hasn't encountered some Bible thumper that talks about how they're waiting on God for this and that to move and do this miraculous thing in my life. And yeah, there's times where God actually has us wait on certain things. But at least in my case, He's still giving me a to-do list while I'm waiting for this other thing. Man, when I was asking God about my future wife, when I was struggling and lonely and dealing with all these shallow emotions, He just told me to shut up and wait, continue focusing on growing in Him and doing this and this and this to advance my maturity, not to just go find some broad I share a church with and shack up. So there is definitely legitimate times of waiting, but how many people just use that as an excuse to sound spiritual? All they're doing is being a cop-out. And honestly, I don't think we call them out enough. I mean, God didn't have a problem calling me out on just basically taking the coward's way out on dealing with this chick. Because it's stuff like that, man. When it was a hole I dug myself, it's a hole I can get myself out of easy enough. Man, I don't need God's words of whatever just to convey, to bridge the gap between me and this person, to reconcile. I just got to put my pride down and suck it up and just deal with it. Man, God's cool with tough love as long as it keeps us growing up. But We can't keep using God as an excuse just to do whatever we want and say we're waiting on Him just so we can sound super duper spiritual. Man, there is so much more to life than that. And it's about working with what you have, where you're at, while listening to God and going where He is. Because if we keep waiting on God to do something, we're not going to get anywhere. I've mentioned this Bible study that God told me to start, and I've said it over and over and over. I kept waiting for things to just fall into line without me ever really doing anything, without me giving Him a place to fall into. And what's God got to work with then? I mean, He might have the tools, but He doesn't have the manpower, if you will. And, you know, it kind of disappoints me when I hear sermons and the speaker has to give all these disclaimers because church people evidently just, some of them have a hard time thinking for themselves. Like, they just run off at the first thing that the speaker says, and then, this is what God's doing in my life. And they end up just crapping out. I mean, they don't finish their course. Whether they walk so far away from God because they're focused on doing that God's grace can't cover them anymore, or they just get burned out or whatever. But so, you know, if you can just bear with me while I just talk like we're all adults, like we all use the brain that God gave us, because God knows there's plenty of church people that don't, and I'm not trying to sound like a jerk, but so there was this wasn't quite God either. When I was working at this other job a while back, and me and another guy parted ways from the company a little unexpectedly. He and I just started up a business. I mean, he was an entrepreneur anyway, and this is the guy that God told me to learn from about entrepreneurship. And probably, I guess it's been 4 years, a little over 4 years, that I helped this guy start up a business, man. It was his vision, and then he and I just started working together. And I had no other source of income at the time. And I was just telling God, I said, man, I got to do something, because just sitting here telling you how much I love you isn't what's going to pay the bills. It's not what He told me to do at the time. And, man, if I'm not moving, I can't get adjusted to move in the right direction. So I got to be doing something. And so I did. I don't really think God's best for me. You know, I mean, I can say that in hindsight now. But it was something. God had something to work with. You know, we're all learning. We're all adjusting our path and walking out of our own mental bondage. But waiting on God, when a person says that, when they know full well what they can do to resolve their situation, and, you know, a lot of it is just a case-by-case basis, but when you start being able to hear God's discernment, to hear His, when somebody just starts spewing garbage out of their mouth, it just goes against the grain of the peace that's in your heart, and then you know they're just full of crap. But you gotta know where that peace is first. And so, man, this one is a pretty controversial one. Because I hate to just say get out and do stuff. I mean, there was times when God has been talking to me about how I've been trying to develop myself for ministry, and I've been waiting for the right opportunity. And there was times where God knew where I was at, like developmentally, spiritually, that just common sensically. And he told me that, I'm at a point where I can just go out and start ministry. Not like go build a church or something, but just to people, like what I like doing at work, man, just sneaking it in. And it pays off, but you don't really see much of the dividends right away. But you just got to ask yourself, man, what am I waiting for? Am I waiting for God to do something for me? Am I waiting for him to manifest something in the natural, something tangible that I can manipulate with any one of my five senses? Am I waiting on God to do that while I don't do much? Or am I trying to bring myself to the point where God can manifest something in me spiritual that just, whenever God gets something across to you spiritually, man, whenever he gets it in you and it's cemented in there and ain't nothing gonna rip it out, it can't help but manifest in the physical realm. So why are we so focused on getting God to write a message for us in the clouds, or to shine down through the sky and just a beam of light over us or our plan or whatever? I mean, God operates spiritually primarily. Man, there's a reason he doesn't just write up a message in the cloud saying, "I am the Lord, believe in me." And a lot of people will just kind of dismiss thinking that way as being stupid, but evidenced by their lifestyle, man, it's not the case. So man, I was a team lead at this other job before I took the one I'm at now. That was just awful. It was absolutely, I hated going to work. And then this other job came open. I went and interviewed for it, everything. I got hired. And I was, the whole time, man, I was asking God, when can I leave this awful place and start over there? And he told me, like, he gave me a day, which was like 2 or 3 months away. And that sucked. I didn't want to hear that, but I knew it was God. So I had to wait. It's not like I was waiting on God, but I was just playing out where I was at. I mean, maybe God was working in their hearts for something that, I don't know. It's not like it's that much my business anyway. But I just had to count the days and do my best. And fortunately, there was a pretty severe blizzard for the last 2 weeks, I think, before I started over at the job I have now. And you can call it copping out if you want, but I ended up calling into work for like a week and a half. But I mean, you get snow up past your knee, you don't want to drive in that. But I still knew it was God, much as I hated the answer. So stuff like this, man, we just have to be honest with ourselves and just just sit down, have a little bit of FaceTime with Jesus. Be like, hey, I think I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but if there's anything I can do in the meantime, man, let me know. Even if it's just, and God talks with us all where we're at. Sometimes it's just like a nudge in your heart, and then you go to church or you listen to a message and then they say something that just confirms. And then, I mean, that's how God gets a beachhead into you. You start distinguishing that stronger and stronger and stronger. And then God can start, it's like bringing up a baby, man, like little nudges and then feelings and then confirmation and then words and then sentences and then paragraphs and then books that God just downloads to you. And then the hard stuff that you don't want to hear, but it's too late because you already know it's God. But man, where I could have gone the rest of my life, going back to this chick I had to apologize to, I could have gone the rest of my life waiting on God to give me something to say to her. And he wouldn't have. Because then that would, for me personally, that would have been God catering to my pride, basically. You can have pride about how spiritual you are. And that's exactly what it would have bolstered in me. I was spiritual enough to hear God tell me how to apologize to this person. If we don't know how to apologize just in and of ourselves, we already know where to start working with God. Hello, Peppy. She's down here sniffing around. But, man, the whole walk with God is just about being honest with yourself. Hello. I don't think she wants up this time. Oh, she does. Oh, come on. Oof. But the whole walk with God is just about being honest with ourselves, man. What's God got to work with? You say, hello, Peppy. What's God got to work with if we're lying to ourselves, man? God is truth and God's love. I mean, those two, you can't really... So, hello. Sometimes the truth is ugly, but it's up to us to change it. Man, God wants to work with us to change what we look like inside, because he can see it, but we have the ability to stick our head in the sand, especially about ourselves. Man, we put our blinders on, and we just plug away at life and find that rut, that routine that we just bury ourselves in and feel comfortable and not have to face anything in ourselves. Because we're waiting on God to tell us something. Hello. That's not how he works, and we're really just lying to ourselves. And then, I don't know a whole lot about God's judgment, but I haven't been able to get away from that part of the Bible where, sorry, but I didn't pull up a reference. It's just something that's been on the back of my mind for weeks and weeks, where Jesus is talking about the goats and the sheep, and these people will be like, but God, didn't we do all this fantastic stuff in your name? And then Jesus is like, well, you don't even know who I was. Go away. It's a little unnerving just to think about how many church people don't really know Jesus, not on a personal level. Man, it's like church has become a place where you can just go purge your conscience for the last 7 days and then start building up this stock where you can repent for the next weekend. And that's... we can't keep waiting on God when he's given us tools we need to get started. And yet he wants to work with us. But as we draw nearer to God, then he'll draw nearer to us. That's, I believe, in James 2 verses, Bernard. Bernard and I have been going back and forth. He just started doing his bilingual broadcasts. And he said he was going to use 2 verses. So he was up in the ante with me, trying to get me to use 3. But I may just meet him at 2. We'll see. But, man, it's a lot of fun talking with these other people doing broadcasts. Anyway, we can't be afraid to be honest with ourselves, especially before God. How else are we going to find truth? But God's given us exactly what we need to get started. Even if we think we're further along, more mature in God, he's given us where we need to put our foot for that first step. And We may think we deserve a little bigger step, a little more credit from God. Again, man, that would just bolster our own pride. And we got to trust God that He will undercut that pride from us, even if it hurts, man. We're probably going to fall down a few times when we're learning how to get rid of that. But it's that honesty, that love of God, where you can just get beside yourself and have God point out all the stuff that He doesn't like about you. I mean, He's not going to overload you. At least He hasn't with me. But it can get kind of uncomfortable. But how else are you going to grow, man, if you don't know what to get rid of to make room for God? And we got to trust Him. And we got to let Him do His work, too. There's another thing I've really been thinking about this last week is just witnessing to people. Man, I mean, we can't always wait on God to give us a grand spiritual word for this person, and then this person will just be convicted and just fall down and start crying at our feet, and then we can just stand there and feeling all super spiritual and proud of ourselves that we can hear from God. Sometimes it's just about injecting God into conversations, or just bringing God with you. I mean, a lot of times that's just enough for people to take notice. Yeah, I mean, there's times God will, at least for me, God's given me something to say to somebody, and it's not hyper spiritual, man. Honestly, He lets me get away with not even mentioning Him when I'm talking to this person and saying whatever it is He's had me say. Why is that? I might be trying to be a little too subtle, but if God had me say it, man, all I have to do is be the boat that God rides in on to establish a beachhead in that person's heart. Man, if what I said is from God, they go home, they try and sleep, they come back to work. I mean, they can't get away from it. It's something that's always there, just nagging at them. And if it's God, man, God's going to be the one to get them. Not me, not you. All we got to do is throw the bait out there, and God's going to be the one to hook them. But God's got to work with us where we're at. If we keep waiting on Him, we're going to wonder on our deathbed why we didn't get a chance to do anything for God. And then when we get to see Jesus face to face, He's going to have a couple of harsh truths for us. So, man, when it comes to ourselves, we just got to face the ugly truth, man. Just embrace what God has said to us and accept that it's going to end up being a lot better than how it is now. So, I think that's about all I got now. But we can't keep waiting on me to say something. Anyway, man, I just want to encourage you guys just to spend a little more time with God and see where you're supposed to be next. See what He wants you working on now. And for a lot of us, that's just continuing to mature in Him, adjusting our perspective, just that much more, just so we can see that much more of Him. And if that's all we can handle at once, that's all God's going to give us. And baby steps are okay. That's how you learn how to walk, how to run in God. We'll get there, but we got to try. So, see you guys next week. Love all of you.